So as many of you guys have heard, the company Netflix, known for their shows like Stranger Things and their serial murder of Blockbuster stores in your neighborhood across this nation, when will we prosecute them for those crimes, is in a lot of financial trouble. They're losing subscribers, they're projected to lose even more subscribers, and finally, in an effort to stop the bleeding, Netflix has taken aim at its own employees who will sabotage the company based on the fact that they have political disagreements with their content. We're going to get into this. We're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about how some people on the right wing are exaggerating the importance of this letter. On the other side of this ad, because this is gold, we're doing noble gold transition. Let's go over there and then come back over here and talk about the thing. Now it is time to set your goals for the next cycle of inflation. That way you're moving forward, making money instead of losing money, and you have the freedom that comes with that. And this month, Noble Gold is offering a very special 3-ounce silver American Virtue coin completely free for anybody who starts a qualifying IRA this month with Noble Gold. You can't go wrong with them. Go to noblegoldinvestments.com, 877-646-5347. And again, I appreciate Noble Gold for sponsoring this video for so long. It's really important to support the long-term sponsors of this channel because that actually helps and supports me. So as I talked about earlier in this video, Netflix is hemorrhaging subscribers. They lost about 200,000 subscribers in the last quarter, and they're projecting close to 2 million coming up in the next quarter. And there's a multitude of reasons why behind this, and none of them have to do with the movie Cuties, and none of them have to do with wokeness at all. The number one reason why Netflix is losing subscribers is competition. Everybody else is stepping up their streaming services, and Netflix is no longer the one-stop shop that it used to be. You see, we've already passed the golden era of streaming services. Back in the day when it was Hulu, Netflix, and Amazon Prime, and maybe one or two others, we had access to a broad variety of content on all of these different services. If you guys remember, Netflix had a whole set of Marvel shows, they had shows from the CW, they had shows from all different networks that were on their platform, and there was weird announcements about how they were paying a bunch of money, like $100 million for Friends or Seinfeld, just to keep you interested in watching the oldies but goodies on their service. However, competition has emerged in the streaming market, and this competition has not only competed directly in terms of for the dollar amount with users of Netflix, but they also compete with Netflix on the fact that they're using their intellectual property and licensing rules to prevent Netflix from having these things. They're competing in the exclusive market. So Netflix was always benefited and historically always made a ton of money based on the fact that people largely go to their service not to watch their new programming, but to watch their old programming. Whenever they release ratings, which by the way, they don't often do, they always do it in terms of, oh, look at how great this is. Look at how many people are watching this specific thing that Netflix just started, but they don't talk about how the bulk of their views is and has always been older shows that belong to other networks that are now setting up streaming services. So the first thing that you need to know about Netflix overall is the fact that they're losing money due to the structure of intellectual property rights on these streaming services, and not necessarily due to the fact that they're going woke with their original programming. However, their original programming does in fact play a role in why they're losing money, because one of the problems that Netflix has is if they can't draw people in with other people's IPs, that means they have to create or purchase their own intellectual properties, and the Netflix shows have dropped off in quality significantly. Even their good shows have shown worse and worse returns on the further seasons. Perfect example of this is Black Mirror. It was great to watch the British seasons that were actually BBC done, or they were done somewhere on the British networks. I don't know if it was specifically BBC, and Netflix for a while seemed to be carrying that torch. But the last season of Black Mirror, the one with Hannah Montana and the Disney Channel adventure, was terrible. It put a lot of people off the service. The subsequent seasons following the first season of Stranger Things weren't good, although 2 was worse than 3, and the kids are growing up, so obviously that IP is going to die. Netflix just keeps cramming this content out there, and they're not getting those big cultural phenomenons like they used to. Also, a huge problem with Netflix, and it's one of the reasons why you see the other streaming services diverting away from this business model, is the fact that they release all of their seasons, all the episodes in one season, in one shot. So if you're somebody who's waiting for a specific show, you don't really have to pay for Netflix throughout the course of the year. All you have to do is pay for it when the show comes on, or get a free trial, 15-day, 30-day, or whatever, binge the show you want, and then cancel it before you're charged. Or minimum, you're only paying for 1 month of content. So people who are excited about the good Netflix shows, which are now fewer and far between, don't really have to pay all that money for Netflix, because the way that they release the episodes is not conducive to hooking you in. Now, theoretically, you could do the same thing with Disney Plus. If you are interested in The Mandalorian, you don't have to subscribe week to week for the 8 weeks for them to release the show. What you could do is wait for the show to come to its conclusion, then subscribe or start a free trial or whatever, and then you can watch the episodes all at once. But for the most part, when you're doing a week-to-week structure, people like to stay informed and talk about the series as it's going on. This is why we're seeing the reversion of streaming back to the old business model, and Netflix seems to be lagging behind in that regard. Now, with all those problems related to Netflix, the intellectual property problems, which are leading to content problems, the fact that they're not quality checking their original content, so they don't have the reputation of HBO because they seem to just approve anything, and the fact that Netflix doesn't have a release schedule that's conducive to long-term subscriptions, you can understand why people are opting for other services, because Netflix might be one of the first with this business model, but that doesn't mean you're going to be the best, and that doesn't mean you're going to last the longest. We now have to get into the wokeness of the employees and how and why Netflix is trying to push back against these people. And the reason why is because when everything's going well, when you're Netflix, when you're this big company that gets all the attention, when you are actually synonymous with hookups, the whole Netflix and chill thing, you're the only one on the block, you can afford to have complaining, whining, and stupid employees that are actually working against your company by doing things like, complaining about the content that you've already paid for because it bothers their sensibilities. So Netflix for a long time has let this wound fester. Netflix for a long time has tolerated all the negative media headlines that quote people from within Netflix that are complaining about how the content that is paid for by Netflix that actually draws people into Netflix is actually not woke and not 100% progressive. And one of the biggest examples of this, obviously, is the whole Dave Chappelle thing. Dave Chappelle spent a long time on hiatus from the world. He left his Comedy Central show. It was one of the most anticipated returns in the history of comedy, and Netflix had the exclusive rights to his return to comedy. They had the exclusive rights to his special. This was a huge event. Undoubtedly, a ton of people subscribed to see their favorite comedian return to stand-up and be in his prime form on Netflix's platform. And what happened? People started attacking Dave Chappelle because they didn't like his jokes. People started attacking Dave Chappelle because, God forbid, you ever make a joke about the transes and treat them like legitimate people. You have to treat them like they're made of glass, and your words at a certain pitch might actually shatter them. And unfortunately,
Dave Chappelle, Dave Chappelle, Dave Chappelle, Dave Chappelle, Dave Chappelle, Dave Chappelle.
This wasn't just whiny people crying about this outside of Netflix. Netflix employees from within the company were doing everything they could to sabotage the company. They were talking down Dave Chappelle. They were leaking stuff to the press. They were complaining internally. They staged that cringy walkout that barely anybody showed up to. Everything and anything to undermine the company because they wanted to take a stand, because these little brats and millennials and Zoomers were taught at a very young age that their feelings take precedent over everything. And when your company's doing well, when your stock price is up, that may be a-okay. You may be able to tolerate that, but you can't have people from within your organization militating against your organization for long if you want that organization to thrive into the future. And this is the backdrop that caused the Netflix CEO or whoever wrote this to update their policy on creativity and expression at the company and tell these woke employees to stop crying and just quit their job at Netflix if they don't like the content. Let me read you from the article. As employees, we support the principle that Netflix offers a diversity of stories, even if we find some titles counter to our own personal values. Depending on your role, you may need to work on titles you perceive to be harmful. If you find it hard to support our content breadth, Netflix may not be the right place for you. Now, there's a couple of other things in this update to policy over at Netflix. One of the big issues that they have is that employees are using the expense accounts of the companies to spend out the wazoo, and Netflix is trying to pare that back, which makes a lot of sense when your company is financially in trouble. And by the way, even when your company is doing well, you should always find ways to reduce costs costs, so that way you're not running up bills and setting up yourself for further turmoil down the road. On top of that, Netflix, although their stock price was high, Netflix, although their revenue numbers were high, was never a company that actually made a lot of money in the first place. You can look at somebody's gross income all you want, or their gross profits all you want, but what you actually need to see is the net profits. And year after year, Netflix is close to, if not in the red. This is because they pay so much money for this content. They spend so much money on IT so that all this content is streamable, so it's actually not that profitable of a company. So they should have been doing this earlier. They should have been monitoring people's spending earlier. But again, it's good to see that this company appears to be making a pivot in the direction of saying, hey, look, if you don't like our content, if you're not into it, don't watch it. That's a you problem. There's a new feature on Netflix where you don't have to watch things that you don't like or you're not interested in. Maybe you should try that out. I think that's great. I think that's fantastic. And I'm so glad to see that these companies are trending in this direction. Maybe Elon Musk buying up Twitter, maybe him trying to set a precedent for big tech, does actually have an impact on companies across the board. Maybe it's influential people like Dave Chappelle who are saying, hey, look, I signed this exclusive deal with you, I'm working with you, and everybody at the company is trying to attack me and they're going against me and acting like I shouldn't be here. I'm Dave Chappelle. I can go anywhere I want and get any kind of deal that I want. Why are you, Netflix, the company, allowing all this nonsense to go down? Now, I'm not necessarily saying that Dave Chappelle did that or somebody on the Chappelle team did that. I do think that the overall problem with Netflix is that they're in financial trouble. They're a vulnerable company, so they're trying everything and anything to stop the bleeding in their company. And this is a problem that they ignored for a while, but now it's something that can no longer be ignored. But hey, those are just my thoughts, and I want to know what you guys think. Why is Netflix in trouble? Do you think it's what I said earlier about the competition and the way that you can hold exclusives if you have the intellectual property for it? Or do you think it's the woke content? Or do you think it's something else? Or maybe you think that Netflix is just trolling with the lost subscribers. Maybe you think they're gonna come roaring back. Stranger Things Season 4 is gonna be epic and there's gonna be no problems down the road. Let me know all of that in the comments below. If you like this video, show me by leaving a like. Subscribe for more content. Follow me on all my social media. Support me via the support links in the description box of this video. This has been me talking about Netflix churning on its woke employees. Till next time.